Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I am Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have just an amazing guest on. This guy is literally a grandmaster in jujitsu. He is a PhD. He's brilliant. He's written, I know of at least one book, probably more if I were to guess. I have the one, the only Barry Broughton on the show, and we are literally going to break through some walls today. So um, make sure you share this out and stay with us. We'll be right back. Let me bring Barry on. Here we go. Barry, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. Let's break some stuff today. I heard your intro.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if anybody's qualified to break through some walls, it should be you. So,
hey, and if you break some stuff, I could fix it too.
Yeah, right. So Barry, I started this about a little over 4 years ago. I think it was for selfish reasons. I was stuck in life and I was like, if I can just get people on here to tell their story about how they got through it, it'll help me. And so far, so good. It's helped. So
I think that's what we all need to be doing though, kind of partnering and see what works for other people and quit trying to reinvent the wheel half the time. And I think we'd all do a lot better off if we shared that.
Amen. I agree.
We always want to hear about each other's successes, but hey, what was the trials that you end up breaking through that really helped you get to the other side?
Because we all go through it.
But a lot of people don't want to admit it.
I know, man. Oh, we're going to have fun today. Holy crap. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
So, although you are more qualified to fight than I am. So
that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So Barry, I like to start with you telling everybody where you were born and raised. Start there.
Oh boy, all the way back. Born and raised in Western New York, a real rural area, about an hour and a half south of Buffalo, almost to the Pennsylvania border. I think the little hamlet town that we grew up in was maybe 1,000 people. I don't know, something like that. Next town a couple miles away was 20,000. So pretty rural. Back in the day. So grew up there, probably a pretty average childhood, I guess. Hey, my brother's on.
I know. I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah. Hey, Larry.
Yeah,
good to see you.
So he can fact check me here. So probably a pretty average life, I would suspect. And as an adult, you kind of realize maybe there wasn't the nurturing and mentoring and guidance type stuff, but hey, my parents had their own stuff to deal with, as we all do.
Sure.
So
I is there anything I like to kind of dig in a little bit?
Sure.
Like, is there anything from childhood and okay, so Larry's already saying you're telling the truth, so we're on a good track already. But is there anything that you think about from childhood? Maybe it was a person, an event that occurred, something that kind of pushed you in the direction that you went as an adult. Because I read your bio. You're like, nobody could call you an underachiever.
Well, that wasn't as an adult though. I was probably a pretty average student, probably less than average in high school. But I think in hindsight, it was probably more because I was more focused on survival and dealing with my own inner lack of self-confidence and all that type of stuff than it was about academics. Mm-hmm. And it was later in life that I actually, later in my teens, that I actually kind of got more driven and more focused. But, I began wrestling. Both my brother and I began wrestling. I think it was in third grade and went through the whole And it was the Junior Olympics kind of feeder program at the time. And so I always liked that type of stuff. In the early 70s, there was the television series Kung Fu. I don't know if you are familiar with that television series.
Yeah.
Carradine.
Yes.
And so I was kind of always intrigued with his duality of, dealing with his inner stuff, but only kind of used his martial prowess to help other people.
Yep.
Kind of the same thing with the movie Billy Jack when that came out. And so
one
those
of my favorites.
Yeah. And so I was always kind of struck by how they had this inner peace, but yet they could really kick some backside if they had to, and never really unless they had to. So I was kind of drawn to that. So just tying all of that type of stuff together, it kind of intrigued me. And so I began training in martial arts when I was 17. And through that, I began realizing that it kind of helped with my self-esteem and self-confidence, and kind of gave me the courage to go on and do other things. I was in the Army for 9 years on active duty. And I think had I not done martial arts first and had a black belt and all that other stuff, I don't know that I would have gone in the Army and then excelled in the Army as well. So for me, martial arts has kind of given me the tools to better deal with some of my own inner demons that I had, and kind of pushed me in that direction. And you kind of mentioned my bio, and it's kind of weird how now, as diverse as my bio seems, it's kind of all ties together with what I'm doing, so it's fun.
So you've mentioned your inner demons a couple of times already, were you bullied at all as a teenager? Did you fight? Did you get into fights
with my brothers? And my sister beat the crap out of me.
Oh my God.
I think that I don't know if I'm making this up. How you kind of formulate things in your head over time.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that there was a fist fight in our household every morning before school. Maybe not every morning, maybe 90% of the time. Wow. We used to fight a lot, and to such a degree that when we were probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, my dad got us boxing gloves for Christmas. And this is the type of guy, my dad was a hardcore Marine, and
oh my God,
we'd call it PTSD now because he was on Iwo Jima. And so we get these boxing gloves for Christmas, and it's like his comment is, "You kids like to fight? Put the gloves on, fight." I don't want to fight. Now that's what I remember. Larry, is that the truth?
Oh my God. Yeah, he says that's the truth. So that reminds me of my younger brother, who I used to beat the crap out of him, and I'm 6 foot and he's now 6'5.5". And so he sprung up in high school and I could no longer beat the crap out of him. So, but we used to do the same thing, and we had the boxing gloves and all of that. So I totally can relate to that.
Well, those little boxing gloves still hang in my academy today.
Do they really?
Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't say bullied. There's neighborhood scuffles and fights and things like that. But, to me, a lot of that is just normal childhood, stuff that you go through that kind of helps us to build some character, I think, sometimes. So I don't know that it was really bullying per se. When I say inner demons, I'm talking about, I just really had a very low self-esteem, self-confidence, those types of things. And when you don't have the confidence to step forward and do things on your own, or say things, or have the courage to explore outside of your comfort zone, then you miss out on a lot of things, I think.
Yeah. So in those brotherly scuffles, so you have how many brothers?
Two.
Older
brother. He was 4 years older. He died back. I think he was 36 when he died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then you have Larry.
Yep.
So who won?
I don't know if there's ever a winner in something like that. My older brother was 4 years older, so when you're, 13 years old and he's 17 or 18, that's a pretty big difference, right?
Yeah. In size. Yeah. Size. Yeah.
And my older sister too, she's 2 years older. I was more intimidated by her than anybody else. crazy story. When I moved back, so I was out of the area in Western New York for about 18 or 19 years. When I moved back and started teaching martial arts, and she became a student, and I'm holding focus mitts for her one time, and she's wailing away on these things. She got this look in her face, and I immediately had this flashback of her beating the tar out of me when I was probably 11 or 12. I had to tell her, stop, I give.
Oh my God. That's so funny. So you said you started studying martial arts at 17. Was it jujitsu or
No,
other
it was
form?
a kung fu style.
Oh, okay. But you got a black belt?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
incredible. And so that was back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s was kind of that transition time. Back that time, kung fu was a big thing back in the 70s. And then I went in the Army 3 years after high school and was able to train with a lot of different people. You're on Uncle Sam's dime and you're going around the world and meeting all kinds of people and get exposed to all kinds of different systems and styles and that type of thing. So,
wow.
I had the opportunity to train in a lot of different things. And so it just kind of all came together.
Was that during the Gulf?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Prior to the Gulf War and then I got out in 1992.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. My younger brother was in the Navy in the, what was it called? Desert Shield first. And then, yeah. So, wow. So did you see any like action? Were you in
just the casualties that came back? I was not deployed in the desert.
Oh, okay.
So I was in Germany at the time. And so my brigade did not deploy. They were the rear echelon because we really expected a lot of casualties to be coming back. And so I ran the medical comms here where they're supposed to be coming back for all of the casualties. I enlisted as a combat medic, and then through continual training became a battalion medical officer. And so we were expected to get all these mass casualties and chemical agents and that type of stuff that fortunately didn't happen.
I remember all of it. That was crazy. So you were, I'm assuming then, did you go to college at any point?
I started when I was in the Army.
Okay.
So if you weren't deployed somewhere, then I was going to college, and I was able to become a battalion medical officer. And so it was all on Uncle Sam's dime. I think I paid, I got a PhD, and I think I paid maybe $3,000 for my entire education.
Wow.
Because when I got out of the Army, then I immediately transitioned, was a Department of the Army civilian, and did my orthopedic surgery training as a Department of the Army civilian at the hospital at Fort Carson, Colorado.
Wow.
So I got that, and then they paid for my PhD afterwards. So as a Department of the Army civilian. So I was really fortunate to be able to do that.
So are you an MD also?
No, PhD.
Okay.
I was a PA, physician associate, physician assistant.
Okay. I don't understand I guess I don't know the whole line. So were you an orthopedic surgeon then?
I did orthopedic surgery as a PA.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So it's just an additional 2 years training beyond your PA training. And then my PhD was after that. So PhD is a higher academic degree, is the highest academic degree you can get. And then MD and DO and all of those are more of a professional degree.
I had a Dr. John Jakewish was on the show, and he's PhD also, and he said, we tell MDs what they need to do.
That's right. We're the ones who educate them.
I know, that's so funny. So wow. Now along the path that you were traveling back then, you're also studying martial arts.
I was always training and teaching. And I loved being in medicine. I loved helping patients, especially doing orthopedics, because it's really hands-on. And that's probably why I have this affinity for the jiu-jitsu and grappling related arts besides wrestling.
Right.
As a kid and a teenager, because in orthopedics, you're reducing gnarly fractures and you're operating on broken bones and that type of thing. And I liked it. It was fun, but it was not what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I'd be teaching at night, and that's where I thrived. I was doing both, and for a while you're really getting burnt out, and I'd be dragging my wagon after seeing patients all day, but then I'm reinvigorated by the time you're teaching at night and really helping people. And that's what's always kind of driven me, because I know what an impact it was in my life. Since we're talking about breaking through walls, I knew at a young age, when I was probably 18 or 19, that I wanted to teach martial arts full time.
Wow.
I knew that, and I ran into a old school teacher. He also had been a scoutmaster, and he wanted to know what I was doing. I said, told him that at the time I was working as a produce manager at a grocery store and teaching, and said I wanted to teach full time. I eventually wanted to teach full time. He said, well, you can't make any money doing that. And it really deflated me.
Wow.
And within probably 2 or 3 months, I was in the Army and thinking, I got to get an education. I got to do something different. And it sent me on that track in medicine. And so I enjoyed it, but it was always something that kept on pulling me back to martial arts, because, when you treat somebody, when you fix a fracture or you treat them and they get better, they go on about their lives. But for me, martial arts is the medium and the tool to help people become empowered and to change their lives and put their lives on a different trajectory. And so I knew that's what it did for me, and I wanted to be able to help other people with that same thing. And so ultimately, over the years of doing both, as I alluded to earlier, I moved back to Western New York about 21 years ago and had my practice, and I was teaching, had a school, and I'd see patients during the day, do some private lessons at lunchtime, go back and see patients in the afternoon, go back and teach.
Wow.
At some point I knew, something's got to give here, and sometimes it's not really, I don't know if it's really a breakthrough as much as a breaking point to make me realize, okay, I've got to get off this track.
Yeah.
Sometimes in life we get on the wrong train, and the longer you're on that train, the faster it goes, and chug, 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 and the harder it is to jump off, because when you do, there's going to tumble and roll, and there's going to be some collateral damage.
Yeah.
And so eventually, when I took that plunge, I just knew that I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. When I do something, I kind of really do the deep dive and the research to do it. And so I didn't want to have like a safety net, so to speak. So I surrendered my DEA license and let my certifications and state license expire. Wow. So there's no going back. It's like I knew that if I was going to do this, I was going to do this, and there's been no looking back. And that's been 15 years now, I think, since I did that.
You were probably also under the seduction of a pretty decent income from.
Oh yeah, big difference.
Right, which makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, initially it was a pretty big blow. But I was an empty nester at the time, and so I figured if I'm going to do this, it's time to pull the trigger. I'm just getting older, and it's time to do it. I just couldn't continue to live that dual life. I felt like I was almost a fraud when I'm seeing patients, because I'm thinking I'm a martial artist, and I just happen to be doing medicine. It's kind of the way I looked at things. I felt like I really wanted to be somewhere else. So it helped me, though. It really, so you mentioned, the book earlier, and had I not had that background in medicine and have the deep understanding of anatomy, I wouldn't have been able to produce this thing that so many people are really appreciating now, that have been missing in our industry for so long.
I mean, you probably are aware of this, but just for the audience sake, because this relates to both your bone doctoring and martial arts. One time I used to drink a lot. I don't anymore, but I used to. And instead of getting into a fist fight with somebody one evening, I turned around and I punched a refrigerator Now, I
Okay.
don't know if most people know this, but you can actually experience a compound fracture from that. And I did right here.
Ah,
And
nice.
they call it what, a boxer's fracture, I believe, or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
technically a boxer's fracture is
Yeah.
more distal. Yours is more proximal.
Yeah, it sucked. That's all I know.
Yeah, a
And
lot of people refer to that as a boxer's fracture, but technically it's the fifth distal metacarpal that's broken
uh
down. But if you punch something and you don't punch it correctly, or you have massive power like what you had crushing that refrigerator, something's got to
the
give.
refrigerator won, just for the
Yes.
record. So
So something's got to
um
give, and it's going to be the small bone of your hand.
it hurt.
Did you
But
learn
so
from it though?
I did.
Slap it
So
next time.
and I'll never forget the Chinese doctor that said it in the ER. He's like, I said, "Is this gonna hurt?" And he gave me morphine. I forget what, and he's like, "You'll feel it, but you won't care." But
That's right.
but I think that because I've always personally, like Billy Jack, I'll never forget that one line. I'm gonna take this here right foot and slap it across your left face, and you're not gonna be able to do a damn thing about it.
That's
And
right.
I always thought, God, that is so freaking awesome, man. I want to be able to do that. And so
It's that line. It is that line. Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. So I admire the heck out of you for what you've accomplished. And I do want to ask you, like, when you made the decision that all right, I'm walking away from this medical income. Let's start with the income part, because it had to be a tremendous amount of money that you just said, I'm leaving this and I'm pursuing my passion. You had a family. You
Yeah.
have a family. So you had all these things
Well,
going
like I said,
on
I
in
was
life.
empty nester though, so I didn't
Uh,
have any kids at home, so that they didn't have to rely on that.
okay.
Fortunately, I
Okay.
had had savings,
Yeah.
and I already had the other school. I had my school going
Yeah.
already,
Right.
so it's not like I was just pulling the plug and then jumping in blindly into something that I had no clue about. So it already had the real estate purchased and had the building and the schools and had the revenue from the school as well. It just wasn't on same par as what I was doing before.
Right.
My rationale was, if I could spend more time doing what I really want to do, I can be generating more. I can be teaching more classes. I can be doing private lessons during the day. I can be traveling, teaching seminars.
Yeah.
And all I knew is I wanted to be fulfilled and happy, and the income would follow. And fortunately, over time, that has happened. So I feel like I'm one of the fortunate ones, because a lot of martial artists, their dream is to be able to teach full time. And a lot of them, I really give credit, and I respect those that work 40, 50 hours a week, and then they're in the academy or dojo teaching at night. And because those are the folks that really love it.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for the income. I've just been fortunate enough to be able to do it and make a good living and have good employees that work for me. And
Wow.
so
I have a really good friend. I called him yesterday and said, dude, you've got to watch this interview. Adam Marburger in St. Louis he's in jujitsu and has an academy as well. And he has another business that he works full time. And so
yeah.
if he's watching, I'm sure he can relate to what you're talking about. So back up a little bit. And at some point, it sounds like you met your wife and started a family. When did you start a family?
Well, the wife I've got now is not the wife I had then. So,
Okay.
some
I
people,
own that t-shirt as well. So
I never thought I'd be one of those statistics, but that's what happens.
yeah, sure.
And one of the things is that if you're going to have an entrepreneurial spirit, you've got to have the support network to do that. And some people aren't hardwired to be able to take those risks. Some people can't take a risk to save their life. And that's nothing against them. It's just that's the way some people are. So my first wife I had met before I'd gone in the army and all that type of stuff. And when I got married, I had a ready-made family already. And from her children from previous marriage, then we had a couple tragedies, but not to go there right now. But and then we had our own son together, who is grown and living in California at this point. Then after 25 years of marriage, then that dissolved. And it was just about the same time that I took the plunge. It was about a year after I left my practice and was teaching full time.
Oh,
My
wow.
current wife, we met several years later, and so we've been married now since 2013.
Wow.
And she's amazing, very supportive. She's a martial artist as well, and so that really helps because she gets what drives me. And so, you've got to have that support network. You got to surround yourself with people that are going to be your cheerleader no matter what. And
Right. So important. I say that all the time. Like, that's the most. I don't think there's anything more important. And my wife is on here right now. She's such a good woman and supportive, and she's always she's my biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're fortunate, those of us that have that. I didn't really realize that you hear about these dream relationships, and I thought I was all a bunch of bunk. I thought it could never happen. And here I am, the later stages of my life, and it happened. And so I'm very fortunate, and so just to kind of expound upon having a good support network, this last book that I did, that I wrote, Comprehensive Anatomy for Martial Arts, that's been mulling in the back of my mind for probably 15 years. I started writing it probably over 10 years ago.
wow.
And there was numerous false starts and redos, and this is too much, it's too in depth. A year before it ended up being published, it was over 1,300 pages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so it whittled it down to just under 500 pages. Had it not been for my support network, my students, my staff, my wife, it would have never happened. I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so surround yourself with the people that are gonna have your back no matter what.
Can you hold your book up so we can show it to everyone?
Yeah,
I see one over your shoulder there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you full screen here.
So this is the soft cover. So there's paperback and hardcover. So lots of good stuff in there. And so what kind of sets it apart? There's other martial arts books that cover anatomy on the market, but they're all pretty cursory, and kind of most of them just kind of a picture of a muscle or a skeleton, and kind of that's about it. But I knew that what helped my students to excel on a world-class level was having an intimate understanding of the total human anatomy, and how it interacted with other organ systems and other anatomy systems, and to tweak certain things that are subtle nuances that other martial artists don't know because they don't have that intimate understanding of anatomy. As an example, you said you'd done Taekwondo. Taekwondo folks are great at kicking, but if you don't understand about that post pivot foot, your hip gets bound up, and you're going to limit the height and power of your kick. If you're doing an arm bar and you don't turn it a certain way and don't tighten the capsules and the rotator cuff properly, the person is not going to tap. It's not going to hurt them enough. And so, or break it.
So barbaric.
I know it sounds it, but it's really not. And so I remember the first time in anatomy and physiology class, we were doing a cadaver lab, and you got to cut open the shoulder, and I'm kind of messing around with the humerus, the arm bone, as it articulates with the shoulder. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. That's how an armbar works. And stick my finger in and boom, pop the humeral head out. I'm thinking, that's how that works. It got me thinking about anatomy. Well, I mentioned this in my book. I never told the patient this, but when I was doing my orthopedic surgery training, the first time they did an open shoulder surgery where the guy had chronic shoulder dislocations. And so you do this big incision, open it up, and you're running the shoulder through the range of motion. I'm thinking, if I tweak my arm bar like this, it'll be much more effective.
Oh,
I never went back and told the patient, oh, hey, by the
way. You taught me a new technique today.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of just the point is, I guess, that all those life experiences come together if you're willing to let them come,
Yeah.
and so it helped me. And so that's why this book is much more in depth than a lot of the other anatomy books. And so what I've done is not only does it address anatomy and give accurate anatomy, real anatomy, not some of the bunk that's been taught, 100 years in martial arts, But in each section, it talks about how does this apply to martial arts? How does it apply to combat sports? How does it apply to whatever the endeavor is, or real life self-defense? So not only to potentially inflict harm, but also protect yourself, so that you know how to protect yourself as well.
Wow. So, I think that well, I want to ask you, like, and then we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but with the people that show up at, do you call it a dojo or an academy?
We usually refer to academy, yeah, because we
Academy.
kind of look at it as it's a lifelong learning pursuit. Just we try to have a different emphasis on its education curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah. So when people show up there, what are the reasons? What are the top reasons people come in? They want to learn self-defense. I would imagine that's got to be at the somewhere near the top of the reasons.
Yeah. I think it depends on the era and what's going on. Usually most women come because they want to gain some empowerment and learn self-defense. We're very fortunate that we have a very large female student base as well. So it's probably 40 to 45% of our students are females, which is pretty high in a jiu-jitsu related art. Because, most people don't want to be hitting hard and getting thrown hard and full resistance, getting choked and things like that. But self-empowerment, self-defense, when a lot of guys, they just want to pound heads, and we tell them this is probably not the place for you. We train, we've got 10 world champions, but we tell people all the time that we train martial artists first who happen to be great fighters. We don't treat fighters and then hope that they're going to be a good martial artist. And so for our kids programs, oftentimes parents want to bring their children so they gain the focus and self-confidence to stay focused in school and in academics. And then obviously some bring them because their children are being bullied. Oftentimes what I'll tell folks is that if your child's already being bullied, I hate to say it, but it's kind of too late. You're going to have to make some really dramatic changes, because why was that child bullied? What's the target that has allowed that to happen? And it's really bizarre, because we get folks that come in, even adults, who don't even know how to introduce themselves. They don't know how to make eye contact. They don't, and so we tell people, if you're a wallflower and people don't know your name, it's much more easy to get assaulted and bullied, if somebody doesn't know that there's a commonality there.
So Larry made a great comment saying, one of the things I love about Barry's approach to mentoring his students is that he places lots of emphasis on creating great humans with loads of character as well as martial arts techniques. That's absolutely amazing.
That's why I said before, we just use martial arts as the medium and the tool to teach all these other great attributes.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate, that, and my goal is to help to train lifelong learners, whether it's they continue to train in martial arts or somewhere else, because I think too frequently people become stagnant in their lives, then they're miserable because they're wondering why they're not growing, and we say all the time, evolve or become irrelevant. And if you don't, then life's going to be kind of miserable. And if I'm the same person 10 years from now that I am today, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
God, that's so true. So true. So you started, you left the medical, excuse me, you left the medical field 15 years ago, or your medical practice. Did you have a practice? Is that okay?
Yes.
And you started this full time.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it, just showing up to your academy every day and teaching, or is there more? Are you traveling? Do you go around and speak? Do you, teach? I think that
all the above.
Do you really?
Yeah. I'm fortunate now that I actually sold 2 of my local schools a year ago. And so, martial arts and martial arts schools, it's kind of a different type of business. I knew that I needed to have an exit strategy. And a lot of my peers and colleagues, they have their name all over everything, and it's kind of hard to sell something when your name's all over it and it's not branded for global growth. And that's one thing that changed my trajectory as well. Is around the same time that I went full time, I also changed the name of the school and the branding and all this other stuff. And that set us in a different stratosphere altogether with the marketing that we had done.
Yeah.
But you've got to have mentor somebody that's going to be able to produce and provide the same product and the quality and the standard that you're already producing, that's giving you the reputation.
Yep.
And so through martial arts, because you have such a long relationship with people, the guy that sold the schools to, he'd been with me for 11 years. And so you can mentor them along the way and provide opportunities for people that they would have never had otherwise. But during that time, I was just really working my butt off when I left that, made that transition. Heck, I was flying out and spending a weekend with Larry every month in California to teach some seminars and private lessons. And then I'd be traveling up and down the East Coast teaching seminars on the weekend. And I'd also got a contract with a local college and was teaching self-defense classes and martial arts classes as a physical education course where the college students came to the academy. And it was a really sweet deal for martial artists out there. What they did is they paid me rent at my own school for me to teach at my school for their students to come, and then paid me a salary on top of that.
Wow.
And so that really gave me a good cushion. And so I was teaching about 21 to 23 classes a week. I'd fly out on a Friday evening or Saturday morning, teach somewhere, Saturday night, Sunday, come back Monday, and do it all over again. And so it was just fighting the fight. I knew what I wanted to do. I had a vision for what I wanted to do. I think that's a lot of times people lack that. They don't know what the end game is. They really don't know what the end goal is. They're just kind of duking it out day to day, but don't know what the fight's all for. And so I knew what I wanted to see in the end. And I just kept on pushing forward. And if I didn't do it, nobody's going to do it for me. We don't come from means. I don't have any, inheritance or anything. And my parents didn't have money to give us for anything, so
right.
It was, make your own way.
So you, I get along the way, what were some of the things that, because we kind of talked about this before we went live, but what were some of the things that were, I don't know, setbacks? It felt like, where you get stuck and you have to metaphorically break through walls, and what were some of the things that held you back, or maybe even made you go, this is it, we're not getting through this, this is the end?
Probably some of the biggest things that jumps at me is when I was in medicine, and it's hard to leave something that you're good at.
Yeah.
And so I not to toot my horn or something, but I was good at what I did. And
right.
So that makes it difficult sometimes when you're good at doing it. And you've got a lot of people saying you've got to continue doing this. And of course, most people are going to say, you're crazy for leaving something where you're making twice the money or 3 times the money that you would doing something else. And because they're driven by that. But as you know, you can be poor and you can have lots of money and be wealthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's not what nurtures you and makes you thrive.
Right.
So for me, I think part of the obstacles was not having the support network that I needed to really do what my desire was. And like I said, I got on that wrong train and it just kept on going full bore forward. And it's like, eventually something's got to give here. And it was almost me. I got to the point that I just could not continue at that same pace. And I tried all kinds of mental gymnastics and did counseling to make sure what am I doing here? And, they had this trick in medicine. When you hang your white coat up on the back of the door at the end of the day, you leave all your baggage there. That's kind of hard to do when you're on call every third night and every third weekend. And, it's just, I don't know, something that there's any one thing that gets you stuck sometimes. I think it's just not following what it is that you want to do.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. So I have a friend, he's the head chief of plastic surgery for a hospital here locally. And I invited him to a Cincinnati Reds game in a private suite this weekend. And I'm talking to his wife, texting, hey, can he make it? And he's checking to make sure he's not on call. I thought, what the heck?
A
A
life.
plastic surgeon on call. What?
Yeah.
So but I get it. I totally understand that. That just would suck.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially back in the day where everybody didn't have cell phones.
You had a pager.
You had a pager, so you had to be able to have access to a phone somewhere. And I'd try to go to events and the pager would go off. You didn't know it because it's too loud. And so you're always checking it. And so it's, back then, back in the day, it was you're tied to some place that wasn't quite remote. And so it's not like you could just call and pick up your cell phone and say, hey, yeah, well, why don't you just put a splint on it and I'll see him in the clinic in the morning. It didn't work that way. And so you're kind of tied to those things. And so I think a lot of people justify it. Well, I'm making enough money that, this is worth the sacrifice. But, medicine today is not the same as it was years ago.
Right.
And if you're not called to help people, there's a lot of other professions where you can make a whole lot more money with a lot less of the brain damage that goes along with it.
Yeah.
In my worldview.
So how does somebody in your opinion find that because it does take some self-reflection and digging deep.
Yeah.
But how does somebody find that passion, that thing that I believe that we were all sent here to this planet to do something spectacular, and that 99.9% of us go to our graves never having really tapped into that.
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier on being a lifelong learner. Try different things. Don't be afraid to fail at something. I've just kind of always been in the mindset, I'm not going to quit. I all or nothing, but quitting is different than failing. And I've certainly failed a lot, and people think, well, you've done all these things, but I've certainly stepped in it too many times, and I'm embarrassed sometimes of things that I've done in my past that I certainly would never do today. But you've got to make mistakes and you've got to experiment. Don't be afraid to go out and try something that you're going to, suck at, and always be willing to be a perpetual student. And even where I'm at today, I still go train and do seminars and have mentors that in different aspects of my life, I've got people that I can go to and seek advice and seek counsel. And so I think that's just go out and learn something. If you want to figure out your artsy side, go take a pottery class or something.
Right.
There's all kinds of adult education classes out there for anything. And my gosh, with the internet now, you can learn anything from anywhere. And just start delving into different things. And if you don't like it, like 3 days of Taekwondo, Ken, and go elsewhere and do something else.
Right.
And try something else. It's okay to be kind of to try all these different things and not master any of them.
It's so true. It's so true. So I've been told that obtaining, okay, so let's just be honest. In Taekwondo, you can literally get a black belt in like 6 days. I'm kidding. But it's fast. Like you can get one pretty fast.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, I've been told it takes a long, long time.
Yeah. For us, it's generally 8 to 10 years
to get a black belt.
If you're really cranking it out, 6 years. Wow. Especially if you start as a kid. Kids takes even longer for us in our system.
Wow. And you're a grandmaster.
Yeah. And we don't award black belts to kids. So we got 2 different curriculums that the kids go through. And then once they can get a junior black belt, 14, 15, but it's not a full black belt. They know it. Everybody knows it. And so it's not until 16 that they can actually be moving towards an adult black belt.
Wow.
So, but that, if somebody's getting something out of one of these schools that they can get a black belt in 2 or 3 years and they're actually getting something out of it of value,
Yeah.
good for them. Go for it. But my point is, don't tell somebody that you're going to learn real self-defense to be able to protect yourself in your 6-month black belt program. That's just not going to, that's not going to work, because it's a mindset that you've got to have. I tell folks all the time that, a warrior is not defined by his skill set. A warrior is defined by his mindset, his willingness to engage with the enemy in the face of imminent danger. When you're outgunned, you're outsized, are you still willing to engage? And you can't get that in 2 years of training. Sorry, I just don't think that that's real. I've treated the gunshot wounds. I've treated the knife wounds. I've treated the injuries from this stuff. I know that it's devastating, and you've got to win that psychological battle first before you win the physical battle. And you're not going to get that in a crash course.
Yeah.
You've got to have gotten bloodied once in a while. You've got to have sucked, and have somebody grind you into the mat day after day.
Yeah.
And eventually realize, oh, I'm not drowning anymore. I'm doing okay.
Right. I've seen my buddy Adam. He filmed it's funny. He's hilarious, but he filmed a testimonial video for me from his phone, and he had a black eye. And he said, and you can see he says, like, Ken beat the crap out of me until I finally said, okay, I'll do it. It's just funny. But so all right. I want to talk about, like, what, and again, this is based on your opinion, and I think that fear is way overused personally. I think that it's the number one answer to the question I'm getting ready to ask you. So now I've set you up. You can't use that. But what stops people, man? What from financial success and real freedom and happiness in life, in your opinion, what is holding people back? What's stopping them?
Fear.
You weren't supposed to say that. That's an easy one, as far, to throw fear out there, because it's just so obvious. But I think that it's never just one thing, really. I think it's usually multiple things. We've already touched on some of them, not having a vision, not having a support network, that type of stuff. For me, and for what I know, a lot of peers that I've worked with and people that I've counseled over the years, I think sometimes it's just the lack of stick-to-itiveness, if that's even a word, the perseverance, the willingness to get bloodied and be in the trench and to fight it out day after day. So I think that perseverance comes from self-discipline and realizing that failure is different than quitting. So just sticking it out and sticking to the stuff and battling it out. I think we just really live in a culture and a society now where everybody wants something so quickly, like the black belt. Whenever somebody calls us and says, hey, how long does it take me to get a black belt? Well, we just know that student's never going to stick around. And so they're not willing to, oftentimes people aren't willing to stick it out. And so they quit. And once you quit once, it's easy to quit the next time. That's easy to quit the next time. And after a while, I think quitting becomes a habit for people. I tell my folks all the time, quitting lasts forever. Pain's temporary. Pain is always temporary. I don't care. It might be when you die, pain goes away, but it's temporary. But once you've quit, that's your legacy. That's stamped in history, And you create a pattern of suffering. And I love the Buddhist saying that pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is a choice.
Yeah.
And you create that almost like a pattern in life, and it's going to lead to suffering, right?
Yeah. And when you realize that, okay, so I'm working, whatever it is, 18 hours a day or 20 hours a day, and it's for myself, that perseverance, that pain fades after a while, and that balm of success kind of helps to alleviate that. So I think probably it's the perseverance for a lot of people, if it's a big thing, besides all the other things that we talked about, the intangibles, as far as not having a vision and that. But fear's always worked in there somewhere. I mean, why do they not have the perseverance or the self-discipline, but it's got to be modeled. And I think it's got to be learned. And going back to that, being a perpetual student, you learn after a while that, okay, this is going to be hard. I'm going to have a longer learning curve on this maybe than others, but surround myself with people that can shorten that learning curve for me and let go of the ego. One thing that I learned, especially in the martial arts realm, is if you're going to really succeed and you're going to have something that's really reproducible and have for a long time, sometimes you got to make yourself vulnerable and test it and make sure that it's really accurate and relevant for today.
Yes, I concur. When somebody you said when somebody calls and says, how long will it take to get a black belt? That's funny. Because that is the society we live in, man. Right. It's microwave, forget the oven, let's go right to the microwave.
That's right.
But when somebody calls you and look, if I were going to start at 54 years old, resume my martial arts pursuit, I would probably, in the back of my head, I would be like, okay, ultimately I would like my goal to be, I want to be a black belt, or I'd like to be a grandmaster someday or whatever. Right. But so in my head, that's going to be a target for me.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
What question should they be asking? If you're saying that, they're not going to stick around if that's their only thing, what should they be focused on when they call you?
What do you teach? What are you going to be able to provide for me? It's a commodity that you're actually giving somebody. So what we do is we kind of flip it and ask, well, what's your goals? What is it you want to get out of this? Because everybody trains for different reasons. And there's always going to be a sacrifice at some point, whether it's time or money or family or whatever it is, because this it doesn't come cheap. For us, what we often ask people is, well, what's your objective? What's your goal? And we try to tell them, even though black belt is a goal for a lot of people, all a black belt does and all any rank does is just show where you're at in the curriculum. And black belt just shows that you understand the basics, and now you're ready to really begin to learn and put things together. And so that's why we have a totally separate black belt class. And because black belts that have been training for years, they're always going, wow, the light bulb just went off on why am I doing this way? And so we try to encourage them to be, again, a lifelong learner. And it's about your journey. It's not about the end goal. Keep the end goal in mind, but there's got to be a lot of other smaller goals. And if you're just focused on getting the PhD or getting the black belt, sometimes that's a long way off. I've been fortunate that, through different things I've been involved with in life, whether it be Boy Scouts or military or martial arts, there's the end goal, but it's kind of, there's set up to have smaller short-term goals to help you get there. And so you kind of just learn that I've got to do these other things first. I've got to have a good foundation before I can excel and do the other things. So they should be asking questions that align with what their objective is. If their objective is self-defense because I've had domestic violence in my life, then probably that 6-week course that you were referring to, crash course, is not going to be it. You better be training somewhere that's going to give you some down and dirty techniques to survive the next beating from your spouse or whatever it might be. So you need to be asking the questions that are relevant for what your long-term goal and your objectives are. We got some people that call that just want to train for their next MMA bout or whatever it is. And so we try to focus on, okay, what's the objective here and how can we meet that or not meet that, and not be afraid to send people elsewhere, because I don't want to contaminate the pot, because sometimes you just get knuckleheads that we tell people, we give everybody a 2-week trial, by the way, and they think that it's for them, but we know that it's for us. We're trying them on. And sometimes we say, you know what, this is not going to be a good fit.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that.
So,
so you're not, so Larry says you're not the cheapest. That's good. I like that.
No, it's one of those reverse things. And I try to tell other martial arts school owners the same thing, is when they open a school, they kind of call around, find out what's everybody charging. They lowball. I did the opposite. What's everybody charging? Okay, I know that what we're producing is going to be a higher standard, and so we're X% higher than everybody else. There needs to be a value to what is its perceived value is a big thing.
Yep. I totally, something else that I talk about. Who wants to be in a race to the bottom? Not me.
Right. Yeah.
No.
And if you just realize that if you lowball yourself, you're going to have to work twice as hard. You're going to have more students in the door. And, I don't care what martial arts school you're in, you have a very high attrition rate.
Yeah.
Ours is extremely low compared to the industry, but most schools have a very high attrition rate. And so why would you want to be having to keep on hustling all the time to get, $79 in the door,
No.
and
who wants to chase $79 and
right.
Like, dude, do I have to come and put you in a headlock to get my $79?
Right, yeah. I'll send one of the kids from the kids class.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had, and I wanted, we're running out of time, but I want to talk about, because I know you were involved in the Olympics but have you ever, before we get to that, have you ever had a real life situation where you were out in public and had to use your skills?
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but I wouldn't even say it was a real life situation. I'd only been training for maybe 5 or 6 months, and there's just a knucklehead around town that was just pounding on our door. And, when we had an apartment, I can't remember if Larry was there or not. He'd know the guy's name if I mentioned it. And it was just a scuffle. It was a fight. But after a while, you realize as a martial artist, the more experience you get, the more you realize I have nothing to prove here.
Right.
I prove it every single day on the mat. And sometimes people just make bad decisions, and you realize, the guy had a bad day, boss yelled at him at work, somebody kicked his dog, wife's upset, and sometimes people just make bad decisions. And now it's just people are too willing to pull a gun or a knife, and it's just not worth it sometimes. And so in a situation, I've avoided a lot of situations that could have turned out really bad, or I've been able to talk somebody down where it could have been really bad. But I think it's de-escalation is a big factor and a big key in self-defense. And if you think the first line for self-defense is this, then you're missing the boat. It better be you able to communicate and de-escalate the situation, because it can go south really, really quickly.
Wow. That's the way of the peaceful warrior. I don't know if you have it.
Yes, absolutely.
One of my Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. It's a great movie too, with Nick Nolte, and
that's right.
So you, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of martial arts. So you, okay, so you were involved in the Olympics. How did that even happen?
Actually, it's world championships.
Oh, okay.
But jiu-jitsu is not in the Olympics yet, and so that's why there's lobbying to get that, make that happen. So how'd that happen? Well, years ago, my students were competing in full contact kickboxing fights, bouts, and grappling tournaments and things like that, some MMA fights. But I really didn't like the mindset and the bravado that came along a lot of times with MMA. And so I was trying to find a different form of combat sport where they could be using their entire skill set: stand-up striking, kicking, throws, grappling, submissions, all of it. And I stumbled across sport jiu-jitsu that uses all of that. It ties it all together. And so I made some phone calls and networked with some guys to be able to start competing in sport jiu-jitsu. And over time, we were the new guys on the block. And so, of course, you've got a target on your back. And we began winning. And because went from 0 guys competing to all of a sudden now we're producing, grand champions at tournaments, then I was fortunate enough that some of my folks were selected to be on the U.S. national team, and I was one of on the coaching staff as well. And so we went and competed in Australia in 2017 and brought back the team gold in 2017. And same thing in 2019. World championships are every 2 years. In 2019, world championships were here in the U.S. in Orlando, and we took gold there as well. So it's been a fun ride, being able to do that, and hopefully jiu-jitsu will eventually be in the Olympics, and so we can produce a feeder program through the jiu-jitsu organizations to be able to do that.
So I think this is a rhetorical question. Have you ever participated in MMA?
No, no, I'm too old. I'm 60.
Are you 60?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. MMA wasn't around at that point. Now in the academy, yeah, you're doing the same thing. But what we do, it's the same thing. We don't use, we don't have to mix anything because it's all in our system and all in our style. So, but what I like about sport jiu-jitsu more than MMA is that you're wearing a uniform. You're wearing a gi top. Most of us don't walk around the mean streets of Ohio, wherever you're at, in spandex shorts, right? And so
I do, but we won't even go.
I'm not that confident anymore to do that in my physique. Six pack's gone.
Yeah, right.
But with sport jiu-jitsu, it's more technical because you've got a gi top to be doing chokes. It's faster paced because on the ground you've only got 30 seconds to get a submission, or they stand you back up and you go right back at it again. What? You go down, and you got 30 seconds to get to submission. So it's faster paced. It's more real life because our focus is reality-based self-defense and personal protection. Sport is secondary to what we do. And so I just think that sport jiu-jitsu is more in line with the values of what it is that we teach.
Wow.
So MMA was not around at the time that I was competing, but I've competed in sport jiu-jitsu. And so, yeah.
What's that one, the real cocky Irish guy?
Conor McGregor?
Yeah. Could you take him? I think you could. What'd you say?
I said I'm 60.
Yeah, I think you.
No, he's a phenom.
He's interesting. He's a trip. You said that about the bravado, and he's the very first person that. I mean, wow.
Yeah, that's why I had said that we tell folks that we train martial artists first who happen to be great fighters. So we don't. If people think they're going to come through the doors to learn to fight, they're in the wrong place.
Right.
Yes, you can, but there's all these other things that you better be able to do first, because in the jiu-jitsu related arts where you're actually making contact, you can be humbled really, really quickly. As in life, the thing with jiu-jitsu and grappling related arts, you turn your back, you make a mistake, someone's going to choke you out. In life, you turn your back on the problems, it's going to cut you off the knees or choke you out. And so you lose your false sense of, just your false sense of confidence really quickly if somebody hasn't punched you in the face before. So
it's that famous Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." Right. And then it's like,
and it's so true.
Wow, yeah, that is an awakening. It really is. And
again, we get people that call and say, "Well, I want to fight in the UFC." Okay, have you ever wrestled? No. You ever boxed? No. You've been punched in the face? No. You ever been in a fight? No. Well, maybe you ought to come to a couple classes first.
Yeah.
And actually learn something before you start training for competition. Just a thought.
That is so
so my nose isn't really perfectly straight. Well, been there, done that.
Right. That's so funny, man. So okay, how does first I love your energy. I love everything about you, man. I'm so grateful that Jeffrey Wolf made the introduction, and
thank you, Jeff.
And he's such a good dude. And I'm so grateful for that. How does everybody follow you? I do have your website queued up here.
That's probably the easiest way, aktcombatives.com.
Yeah.
And then there's social links and that type of stuff.
What does AKT stand for?
Well, it used to be an intentional pun, or actually, it actually stood for American Karate Tactics, but it also is an intentional pun for act, do something, action before reaction. If you're waiting to react to something, you're already behind the power curve. So It was kind of an intentional pun at first, but everybody just knows it as AKT Combatives Jiu-Jitsu at this point.
You know, I often tell this story that my wife and I, when we first met, we decided to open an office, and I was doing website development and she was in marketing, and we thought, well, this is perfect. And what we found out quickly was everybody else was getting paid except for us. And this big old dude that worked for me walks in my office. I'm on the phone. He's like, there's a guy looking in the windows of your SUV in the parking lot. And I'm like, go kick his ass or something. What like I'm on the phone, like, tell him to get out of here. And he's like, he's got it blocked with his tow truck. And I'm like, tow truck?
Yeah, you don't want to fight that.
I'm like, oh no. And so I remember in that moment feeling like, what's the point of being here? Why? Like, this is insane. And watching my car get repossessed in front of a bunch of employees sucked really bad. Yeah. If somebody called you today and said, man, I've done everything, I've tried everything, I can't get my business to, things, I'm at the end of my rope, what would you say to them to get them to hang on? Because you and I know it changes if you just stay in the fight, right? It can change for you. But what do you say to somebody that feels like they've given it everything?
Look at all the lives that you're going to continue to impact. Hey, where you at? So we can meet face to face. So sometimes it's just a matter of putting your arm around somebody and feeling that human connection and knowing that somebody understands and has been there. Hey, we're talking almost face to face right now, but it's not the same thing as if I put my hand on your shoulder and feel that that human connection. But I think it's just encouraging them. And even though somebody's failing and their car's getting towed away, doesn't mean that you haven't had other successes. This is just one, just snapshot in time. Our life is a big, long movie, and that one snapshot does not define who you are. And don't let that define you. Learn from it, but don't let it define you. Shoot, if I was defined by all my mistakes and that type of stuff, I'd be one massive wart, but you've got to reveal those and cut those things out sometimes. But so I think it's just a matter of reminding them that they've had an impact somehow, no matter what you've done. If you're the type of person that's in business and you're an entrepreneur and they're stuck, there must be some attribute that's gotten them to that point to begin with. Because as you know, entrepreneurs are a different breed than other people. Don't you think? I think so anyway. I think that you've got to have this adventurous spirit. You've got to be willing to take risks and not be dependent upon somebody else to make the way for you. I think if that happened to me and somebody said, well, now you're going to have to go back and start seeing patients. Oh shit, I better start teaching some more classes.
Right.
I better start getting off my butt and quit whining about it and go do something about it.
I have had those moments in my entrepreneurial journey where people are like, why, you know what? You're starving right now. Go get a job. Yeah. And it just made put me in a chokehold because it's like
I give.
I know.
I'm going to see the next, whatever it is, work the next deal, whatever it is for you. But knowing that going back is not an option. Yeah. That's why I said, for me, I knew that I had to burn my bridges. Yeah, I knew that was just so mentally. I had to set myself in that place that this is it. It's all or nothing.
I think that's something else that's very, very valuable lesson is, you hear it, you hear the burn the ships analogy in the story about I don't even know what he was, general or whatever, that said burn the boats. And but there is something about that. If you a friend of mine one time, I got involved in a network marketing business for a short time, and I was all about that. And meantime, my real business was plummeting. And he's like, dude, you can't have a mistress. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what? And he's like, you have a mistress. Like, you can't have a mistress and expect your company, your finances, your business to flourish. It's just not real, so burn the ships, I'm a huge subscriber of that.
Well, I think for people in our circles, that's kind of common, but unfortunately, in conventional thinking, that's not what's taught in schools, and it's not what's taught elsewhere. It's have that safety net, go back, and so you can be doing both. I tried doing both, and it didn't work.
It's hard, man.
It was going to be at my own demise had I continued trying to do both.
I always think, I can always go back if I have to. I mean, if this doesn't work out, I'll make something else work.
Yeah, I'll do something, but it's not going to be for somebody else.
Yeah, right. Wow. So are you available for hire for speaking and
yeah,
I
do different leadership type stuff. A lot of times we tie it in with the martial arts analogy type thing we do as far as breaking through walls and breaking boards and things like that. We tie in. I've got 3 gigs lined up for the next 6 weeks, I think, for martial arts anatomy. These are all for martial arts schools. But I've done keynote stuff as well. So I can juggle.
I'm sure you can. Barry, thank you so much for coming on today, and
thank you, Ken, for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Sharing your wisdom it's so deep. So everybody go to aktcombatives.com. My wife actually put it in the comments as well, so it's clickable.
Thank you, Joe.
And man, you're amazing. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who watched. And if you shared this out, you can get a free black belt
down the street
in Taekwondo. I'm kidding.
All my Taekwondo friends are going to eat my lunch now.
I know. They're going to come and kick my ass. I'm in trouble, man. I'm just playing. Anyway, so no, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You guys have an awesome day. I'm going to end the live stream, but Barry, if you would stay with me, and we will see you all later. Thanks so much.
See you, folks.